The Lee-Enfield, Enfield, or SMLE, which stands for Short Magazine Lee-Enfield, is a 5-star RF that's available through both normal and heavy construction. The Lee-Enfield pattern of rifle was originally derived from the Lee-Metford rifle, a rifle which used James Paris Lee's rear-locking bolt system, and a rifle barrel designed by William Ellis Metford. A 10-round detachable box magazine was added to the Enfield as well, which caused some controversy as some feared the privates would easily lose the magazine, which led to early models having a short chain to secure the magazine to the rifle. This magazine allowed for a faster fire rate compared to other bolt actions of the time, such as the Mosin and Mauser, with well-trained riflemen being able to perform the Mad Minute, where they could fire 20 to 30 rounds in 60 seconds or less. The current record for the Mad Minute was set by Sergeant Instructor Snoxel, who placed 38 rounds in a 30cm wide target at 270 meters in 1 minute. The Enfield was also adapted to use the .303 caliber cartridge, as the Enfield could handle it, while the Medford couldn't, having its barrel deform after a couple thousand rounds. Throughout its lifetime, multiple versions of the Lee-Enfield were produced, with a few military services still using the Lee-Enfield in some official capacity. The original Enfield was produced between 1895 and 1926, seeing service first in the Second Boer War. Next was the SMLE version of the Enfield, sometimes called the Smelly due to the acronym, which was between the original long rifle and the carbine for barrel length. The most famous version of the SMLE, the Mark III, was introduced in 1907 and used in both World War I and II, as well as part in the Korean War. Some changes introduced were the magazine cutoff mechanism, which allowed for a single cartridge to be extracted, and the long-range volley sights. Skipping a few iterations, the Jungle Carbine, also the final variant not including the L42, is also an interesting variant of the SMLE. With a cut-down stock, flash hider, and lightened receiver. The Jungle Carbine was made for, guess what, fighting in the jungle, which needed a shorter and lighter rifle. Not many were made, however, due to the excessive recoil of the shorter barrel and a wandering zero. The Lee-Enfield rifle family is the second oldest bolt action still in use today, after the Mosin Nagant. Though they're mostly phased out of mainline service, police units such as ones in India and Pakistan, guerrilla fighters, and some Middle East and African countries still use them for either training or partial mainline use. The Canadian Rangers, for example, used the Lee-Enfield up until 2011, as the Enfield were reliable in their cold northern winters. The Lee-Enfield No. 4 is a bolt-action rifle, firing the .303 Mark VII SAA ball cartridge from a 10-round detachable box magazine, which can be detached and replaced or fed with stripper clips, at a rate of 20 to 30 rounds per minute, out to a range of 503 to 2,743 meters. Interbase character art drawn by Ray, Lee's outfit resembles a British parade dress uniform. She wears a white shirt with high collar and ruffled cloth around her neck, white pants with white stockings that have lace cuffs, a brown leather belt around her lower left thigh, brown and gold lace-up boots, white gloves, button-up coat with a sash, a ribbon with a medal at the end of it, singular bullets on her chest, and epaulets, and a monocle in her hair. She holds her rifle, specifically the No. 4 SMLE sniper variant, with both hands, with her right hand near the trigger. The rifle has a No. 32 Mark I scope and a cheek rest. Inner voice lines voiced by Tomatsu Haruka, who also voices Lala Satalin Devaluk in To Love Ru, Kinoho Wanai in Scientific Railgun, Angelica and Yuka Hanazawa in Beelzebub, Mitsuki Mashiba in Working, Asuna Yuki in Sword Art Online, Kaori Orimoto in Origaru, Ryo Kamichika in Durarara, Ginko Sadaka in Gintama, Ina Churu in Danmachi, Pina Kolada in Gate, Kuriko in Sekike, 02 in Darling in the Franxx, Swordmaster in Goblin Slayer, Mina in Pokemon, Iris Cannery in Violet Evergarden, Haru Okamura in Persona 5, Kyoko Hori in Horimiya, Fortuna in ReZero, Tsundere Elf in Uncle from Another World, Minamoto no Yorimitsu in FGO, Sail Leech in Arknights, and Mary in Nikkei, Lee acts like a professional English soldier.
今日から配属されました。リーエンフィールドナンバー4 MK1 です。支援であろうと栄誉を獲得するチャンスに変わりはありません。編成を増やすのですか？勲章はどうやって分配するのです？報告、異常はありません。いつもお目をかけていただき感謝しております。でも指揮官、私は本当にあなたにふさわしいのでしょうか？いえ、そうではなくて、とても嬉しいのです。これから私があなたをお守りします。これこそ私の生涯最大の栄誉。命令とあらば、この制服は宝物なんです。
Like some RFs, Lee's main role is dealing more damage over a short period of time. Her tiles only affect HGs, reducing their skilled cooldown by 18%, and is best positioned on tile 4, though she can be on tiles 1 and 7 if you don't mind losing a tile. At level 10, her first skill, Damage Focus, increases Lee's damage by 75% for 5 seconds. This has a 5-second ICD and 8-second NCD. This raises her damage to 236 without equipment or crits. When fully linked, enhanced, and at level 100, Lee has 80 HP per link for a total of 400, consumes 55 ammo and 90 rations, deals 135 damage, has 40 evasion, 78 accuracy, 36 rate of fire, 7 move speed, a 40% crit rate, and deals 150% damage on crits. Base Lee is able to equip telescopic sights, hollow sights, red dot sights, suppressors, AP ammo, microchips, and capes. The recommended equipment for Base Lee is her special equipment, the number 32 Mark I scope, which was awarded to the top 50% of players in the Shatter Connexion ranking map, but I believe it will be available through the Gray Zone in the future. 5-star special sniper ammo, and a 5-star camo cape. This gives her plus 10 damage, plus 4 rate of fire, minus 3 move speed, plus 48% crit rate, plus 25% crit damage, and plus 120 armor pen. This brings her stats to 145 damage, 40 rate of fire, 4 move speed, 88% crit rate, 175% crit damage, and 135 armor pen. Her skill now does 254 damage without crits. To fully mod Lee-Enfield, she will need 3,800 men frags, 150 cores, and 10 fire control components, or FCCs. This requires roughly 5 months to get the required components, as you can only get the 2 FCCs per month from the black market if you don't pay for the battle pass. Her rarity goes to 6 stars when modded. In her mod art, drawn by the same artist, Lee wears a very similar uniform to her base outfit with some changes. She still wears the same type of white shirt with the neck ruffle and the same pair of white pants, but the lace part from the pants is gone and now replaced by a leather leg harness with 2 pouches and a bayonet with holster. Her boots are now knee-high, more mechanical looking and high-heeled, with her red jacket now open and with shorter sleeves. Her gloves are shorter and brown and white, she holds a cup of tea, and she wears a white cape with hood. Her rifle, now the L42A1, is on a sling around her right shoulder. When fully modded, Lee's tiles now reduce the skill cooldown of HGs by 20%, as well as having an additional tile placed in front of her. She now has 91 HP per link for a total of 455, deals 143 damage, has 41 evasion, 89 accuracy, and 38 rate of fire. Her first skill now also buffs the damage of allies on her tiles by 25% for 5 seconds. Her first skill now does 250 damage without equipment or crits. At level 10, Lee's second skill, Proof of Glory, when Lee receives a buff, she gains additional buffs depending on the status in the echelon. If Lee is the leader, raise all allies' firepower by 8%. If Lee is a team member, she raises her own rate of fire by 15%. These buffs last for 5 seconds. This effect can stack multiple times, with the limit being equal to how many dolls are on her tiles when a buff is received, or a 24% firepower buff for all, or a 45% rate of fire buff for Lee. If she gets the rate of fire buff, it raises her rate of fire to 55. The spec that Lee gains from Mod 3 is the L42 experimental AP rounds, which give her plus 8 damage and plus 250 armor pen. The recommended equipment for modded Lee is her number 32 Mark I scope, her L42 experimental AP rounds, and a 5-star camo cape. This gives her plus 8 damage, plus 4 rate of fire, minus 3 move speed, plus 48% crit rate, plus 25% crit damage, and plus 250 armor pen. This brings her stats to 151 damage, 42 rate of fire, 4 move speed, 88% crit rate, 175% crit damage, and 265 armor pen. Her first skill now does 264 damage, and her second skill, if she's a team member, will raise her rate of fire to 61. Lee is a very special case for an RF doll, where both her base and modded forms are frankly amazing. Starting with her base form, her stats are very good, having a damage stat that's tied for 17th place among RFs, and this is including ties, and a rate of fire that's also pretty high up there. Her damage is further boosted through her skill, giving her 3 seconds of downtime between activations, and her equipment, if you were able to get it, brings her rate of fire up to 40, which is on par with G43 for reference. Overall, her base form serves as a good generalist purpose for more beefy, less mob enemies, though that can be fixed with some rate of fire boosting HD tiles or skills. Her mod, however, makes her amazingly good. Not only does she get massive stat buffs, where it puts her stats at 12th place for damage and 7th place for rate of fire, but her first skill now also gives a 25% damage buff to those on her tiles. Her spec ammo gives her 8 more damage, moving her up to 7th place for damage, and a massive 250 armor pen. The best part of her mod is her second skill, which practically makes her an HG with the buffs it gives. Having her as leader makes the echelon more oriented around a 3-rifle setup, while having her as a member would make it more a setup for 4 HG 1 RF. Not to mention, the buffs she gets are massive. An almost 1/4 damage buff to her allies as a team lead, and almost 50% rate of fire buff to herself as a team member. As for cons, there's the obvious one of her number 32 Mark I scope not being available to those who didn't get it, at least currently in the global server. There's also a massive cost of getting any 5-star up to Mod 3. Her partial weakness to mobs of enemies compared to higher rate of fire RF dolls like WA2000, M14 Mod 3, or SVD, and her tile layout could be a bit better. But even with those, I still highly recommend getting Lee to Mod 2 or even Mod 3, especially for that second skill, and her mod spec being pretty good. And there are people already saying that she's frankly broken with how good Lee is. Thank you for watching. Please follow my Twitter for updates. I also stream, and please check out my other Arknights and Azure Lane videos as well.